Propping my eyelids open with thumbtacks and f***ing toothpicks, I was able to watch the last match on this marathon event. Holes in the arena. The Lollipop Guild versus Team AEW. So let's just give these people's names, because we want to make sure we know who was responsible for this. You had Maddie and Nikki, the Buckaroos. You had their friend Okody, and then their other friend Jungle Jack. And they were taking on the formerly best tag team in the world, now reduced to flunkies, FTR, and Bryan Danielson, who the people still love no matter what kind of shit he's in. And bless his little pea-picking heart, Darby Allin has come back from the dead because Kingston was hurt, and so Darby was wearing a face mask to protect his broken nose, but the face mask had thumbtacks on it. Because we can't be allowed to forget for a second that all these guys dream of being indie mud show jackoffs instead of major superstars on television. So thumbtacks, because it's cool. During the last member of the heel team's entrance, which was Jungle Jackoff, the babyfaces just attacked everybody on the floor, except for Darby, because his music was playing, and then he just ran in and joined it with the face mask. And then the music kept playing when the heels took over. And then at the same time as this is supposed to be the top angle in the company and all the main event people in a violent match and a violent feud, the Buckaroos have to do their comedy to make sure that nobody takes anything seriously. So Maddie gets on the microphone and says, "Cut the music and play a banger. Our new theme music." And they start playing that. And some people are fighting. It's a sloppy fight on the floor, and some people are fighting and some are walking. And then Brian says, "Turn that shit off and play the greatest theme music ever." And then they play the final countdown that Tony paid however much money to play on it while the fight continues. They're in the stands. It's not lit. The cameras can't catch half of it. Some guys are in the breezeway. Some are in the people. It's at one point they did a 4-box to show 4 different groups of action, but they had 2 different shots of the same 2 guys in 2 of the boxes. And Darby did a coffin drop off the bleachers onto some guys. And the song was great, and the people were loving it. And they were waving their arms and they're singing along. But meanwhile, as soon as Maddie then gets the fucking microphone again and tells them to cut that music because we're over budget, it's costing too much. When the music cuts off, it's just a sloppy fucking fight, and the people start chanting, "We want music, we want music." I said earlier, this is the biggest mess I've ever seen as a match or a television product. Because they couldn't follow it. They couldn't shoot it. It was a mess. And it was a slow, sloppy fight everywhere but the ring. And then Jackoff and Darby go to the back parking lot and fight in a tub of ice water and use a fake lead pipe. And that Danielson goes for a dive on Okody, but Okody swings a chair at him and missed him. And he was flying at him. How'd he fucking miss him? And then one of the Jacksons had to go grab a chair and hit him with it to make up for it. And then back in the parking lot, Jungle Jackoff drives a big, like bread delivery truck with his painted scapegoat into a pile of trash and wooden pallets that we are supposed to be led to believe that Darby was under. even though we never saw that happen. The announcers are speculating about it. And then Jungle Jackoff is knocked out in the front seat. And come to find out later, of course, the secret was out apparently hours after the show was over. He was knocked out so he could be prepared for his return. More on this in a minute. Then Cody was moving around like a senior citizen, beating up FTR by himself. Stoop-shouldered, no physique, lack of charisma, pale fucking fishy body, broken down, shitty haircut.
Jesus Christ, I thought you hated Nia Jax.
Well, Cody's even worse. He's not hurting. He can't. His shit couldn't hurt anybody. It's so weak. He could jump up and down on me with both feet, and I wouldn't notice it. So then Darby staggers back to the ring, apparently from being run over by a truck, and fights Cody and gets 2 counts on him. But then the Buckaroos powerbomb him onto a bunch of chairs and drag him to the stage and put him on the elevating platform that they make their entrance on. And they're telling production by yelling into the camera, take him down, take him down. And the production people, they're playing the music or cutting the music when they say, and they do the thing where they take him down on the elevator. There are logic holes, plot holes, whatever you want to call them, in this thing, big enough to goddamn get Tony Khan's fucking checkbook through.
Yeah, there's the biggest one, Tony Khan. They establish he's sitting at Gorilla. He's running production. How come he let all this happen?
Yes, he's paying he's paying the fucking elevator guy. He can't say, don't do that. So then they all fight in the back, and they beat Danielson up, and Spike pile drive him on a poker chip, a big wooden poker chip. And then Cody put Cash Wheeler through a table. Immediately after, Nikki dove off the tunnel and put Dax through a table. And then Jungle Jackoff wanders into Gorilla and sees Tony sitting there at the monitor. So again, who is telling who how to produce this show? And then Jackoff grabs Tony and starts dragging him out. And you can also tell that somehow old Jungle Boy looks like he's come through a goddamn bucket of Vaseline. He's shining. All of him, he's shining.
Well, he had been thrown into an ice bucket earlier.
No, he's shining with fucking thick goddamn shit on him. He ain't wet. He's greasy. And I'm not talking about the normal grease either that he has on him. And as well as the normal cheesiness. So then all of a sudden they cut to a shot on the stage and there's everybody doing nothing. Heels and baby faces kind of waiting for what they're supposed to see next. And the announcers are saying, well, where is Tony and Perry? Where are they? Well, they couldn't do anything until Darby came out with the Flamethrower. And then here comes Jungle Jackoff dragging Tony. And as he pushes Tony down on the stage, and we'll talk about what happened to Tony later because at least it wasn't on camera. But he shoves Tony Khan down on the stage, does Jungle Jackoff, and Darby takes the Flamethrower and lights him on fire. They put the stuntman movie gel on him so that it supposedly doesn't burn your skin within a certain amount of time. And they lighted him on fire with a flamethrower. And then suddenly there's Maddie and Nikki with the goddamn fire extinguishers putting him out. Can you imagine anybody stupid enough not only to be lit on fire, but to have the Jackson boys be the ones to stand by to save you?
You knew something was coming when, I don't know what you thought, but those fire extinguishers really stood out when all of a sudden they were there at the side of the stage.
Well, yes, it looked like they were goddamn, ready for the fucking fires after the San Francisco earthquake. They were going to set the whole building on fire. They were prepared. And then the crew jumps on him with towels, putting him the rest of the way out. Well, then the Buckaroos and Darby go to the ring and do some shit. And Darby kicks O'Cody in the balls, and Coffin drops also in the nuts. Right on his fucking dick. Coffin dropped him. And the Bucks made the save, and then the Bucks called to the ceiling for a hook. And they lower a hook with a rope. Whoever's in production, go ahead.
Can I say something here? Because I don't know if you saw it. I think it may have been on the pre-show, but it was the first thing I thought about here. They had Dr. Martha Hart on this show.
Oh, no.
To announce the Owen Hart tournament for men and women coming up, because what they said, and they made sure to note that Tony and her talked about it in December, but the winners of the two tournaments will get title shots at Wembley Stadium.
Oh, yeah, well, I forgot to mention that earlier because it's just coincidental that they say that just one day after Triple H announces that for King of the Ring getting the title matches at SummerSlam. But they talked about it in December.
My point, though, is Dr. Martha Hart is there.
In the building while they're going to hang a goddamn wrestler.
While guys who are not trained rig professionals or whatever the fuck you need to be are operating this thing, hanging this guy upside down. Even though it wasn't terribly high up, it was high enough that he could have broken his neck.
Well, it was high up enough that he was upside down and immobilized, and if something had happened and he'd have dropped on his head from 10 feet, wouldn't that pretty much break your neck? He wasn't able to catch himself. He was all tied up and hooked and everything.
If you're going to have Martha Hart on these shows, don't do things like that. That seems in pretty bad taste.
Well, besides that, then if they lower the hook, but before they hang him, the crowd is just staring while they're tying his legs together. But then FTR makes a comeback on him. But then Matty hits Dax with a chair, and the chair exploded. Again, for what? It's like the exploding tennis shoe they had. For what? And then they got a little more slow heat on Darby until O'Cody put a sleeve of thumbtacks on his arm and hit Cash with the weakest clothesline I've ever seen. And then O'Cody pulls out a shoebox of these new ridiculous Fruit Loop looking fucking shoes in all kinds of neon colors that the Buckaroos are trying to goddamn peddle. And they've got thumbtacks on the soles of them. And they put the shoes on, and then Matt tells the production to raise Darby upside down like the piñata so they can double super kick him with the thumbtack shoes. Brian, I know a lot of people are thinking I'm now lying. Am I lying about any of this?
No, all of this happened multiple times in the middle of this brawl. The Bucks just started giving stage commands.
And then they went to kick Danielson, but Danielson grabbed the shoe and pulled off one of the tack shoes and hit the Bucks with it and then kicked them a bunch and then stomped them and then gave them chair shots. And then the fans start chanting, "Please help Darby. Please help," because he's just hanging there. And then after all this, the Buckaroos stop Danielson and give him the knee lift, and Jungle Jackoff comes back in from being set on fire. And as Danielson is crawling over to help Darby, or try to help Darby, Jungle Jackoff runs over and hits him with a knee lift and pins him. The guy who got set on fire came back to win the match. This right here, and everybody involved in it, and Tony Khan, who was involved in it, are the reasons why AEW will never get better. It will never turn a profit. It will never get a mainstream audience. It will continue to lose viewers instead of gaining viewers. And it will continue to be a place where people go to spend most of their time collecting a check for being hurt and operated on. It was embarrassing to anybody who's ever been a professional in this industry and gave a shit about it. And it took 4 hours and 32 minutes for him to get finished with this fucking dreck. I don't know what else to say. Everybody involved in this should be ashamed of themselves if they willingly went along with it, and if they were forced to because a member of their family was being held hostage. I'll let them off with a warning.
I don't think anyone's embarrassed. I think when you go to work with AEW and go to work with those specific people, you kind of take on the Young Bucks ethos, which is do whatever you want. Anyone who criticizes what you do or tells you to think about it a different way, they are the enemy. They are wrong. And this is what you get. We've had now a few Anarchy in the arenas. The crowds get smaller and smaller, and they got a nice crowd here for this. And I believe it was smaller than the previous time they had been there.
But it's good for what they've been doing lately.
And again, they're doubling down on the stuff with the Bucks. The Bucks were on the NBA show the other day giving out custom championship belts to the host of the show, from what I understand.
Can you imagine when they are introduced on a mainstream television show as any kind of professional wrestlers, what people sitting at home go, what the fuck?
It looks like a Saturday Night Live skit. It looks like two of the guys on Saturday Night Live put on some facial hair, glued it to their face, and are pretending to be wrestlers.
The Sammy Hagar impersonator from Madison Square Garden back in 1986.
Yeah, that's a very good reference there. And then Jack Perry. It's important to note, whatever you think of Jack Perry and his stupid decisions and his stupid attitude, and even before that, we know stories about Jungle Stooge. I mean, there's other things.
Yeah. He's a little weasel who goes crying to his fucking big brothers.
Whether that's all there or not, the fact that Tony Khan saw this guy, rumor has it, doing this gimmick, the scapegoat, on a New Japan show in Chicago, and was like, oh my God, I can't believe how great this is. And now they gave him the win here. There's another example of investing time, energy, push, wins, and Danielson will lose to anyone, so it's not really that big a deal at this point. But still, Jack Perry, he's tiny. He's not convincing.
He's not only tiny and not convincing, it's embarrassing. Because he's unconvincing doesn't cover it. He's obviously, like the other two, playing wrestler, acting like something he's not. They envision themselves as something they are not. They were helped along in this delusion and some element of mass hypnosis for the general public by the little bubble of indie fans that they had for a while. Fads never last. And the elite was the hula hoop and the pet rock. And the only one that it lasted with was Tony Khan. And now it's 5 years past its fucking expiration date. And he's still stuck with these morons as the stars of his company. Which is, again, you could have predicted this 5 years ago, which is why I did. Who he was sold on getting into business with was going to be the one half of his downfall, Tony's, and the other half was going to be he thought he could do this shit despite never having done it before, and now has proven he can't. He can write checks, and his dad can make a lot of money. And as long as they want to spend it, then they'll be around. But this is not good, and it's getting worse, and nobody can claim differently. And, you know, they said, like you said, they said the video game was going to be the difference maker in profit and loss. And the video game, and now, I guess now you can play it for free on certain streaming services. Is this what I'm hearing?
In June, PlayStation has a program, PlayStation Plus, where each month you get free games. Usually they're not brand new games. They're games that have been out for a while. They've exhausted their run. I've gotten some great games. I'm a subscriber. I'm going to be able to get Fight Forever finally without paying for it. And Fight Forever is now there. This comes off us seeing that it was being sold for $3 in stores.
$3 discount bin at Walmart.
That was after we saw it was $10, which was after it was $30. I think it launched at $60. and there's no one playing the game online.
And so now the rights renewal, so they're expecting a TV network that doesn't live and die with wrestling, doesn't have to, if they're willing to give up the NBA because it's too much money and other people are willing to pay more, then they're certainly willing to give up wrestling if they can't get it for the price they want. And does anybody, are these people stupid enough to think, I'm talking about the AEW fans, that, well, they didn't get the NBA, so now they'll give that NBA money to Tony? No, you can buy the best hooker on fucking Bourbon Street for $5,000 doesn't mean you're going to give a goddamn crack whore in a trailer the same $5,000. So when the rights fee comes in, we'll just keep the same deal, or maybe a small increase, or maybe we'll give you less because your ratings are down. Then, like I said before, what's he going to do? Say, well, fuck you. I'll just put it on YouTube. Because who else is interested in wrestling these days when it's not the number one wrestling and the numbers for the program that exists on a major network are going down? How does that call for a raise?
Well, real quick before we wrap things up, and that was AEW Double or Nothing, but Jim...
It certainly was. I'm sorry with my attitude today, but having to sit through, especially over the past couple of days, and then having to spend 4.5 hours of my time on that, I was somewhat verklempt.